As I was convinced this drink would delight my contemporaries in Spain. However,
this is just bags of seeds, drop it! Get rid of it!
Became popular both at court and with the wealthy. Samuel Pepys, the famous diarist, wrote of it the day after the coronation of Charles II.
Wait. My head is sad. Last night, I am sorry. So what was it work out for you?
As cocoa became cheaper, more people could afford to drink.
Welcome to Bull Street. My name is John Cadbury, and this is my shop, where I first established my business in 1824. My father, Richard Cadbury, owns and runs the drapery store next door. Our family are staunch Quakers, and we originally came from the West Country. Father moved the family to Birmingham from our home in Exeter in 1794 and set up his business as a linen draper and silk merchant. Birmingham was a fine place to live, with plenty of business opportunities. We soon made many friends, and my father became a prominent member of the local Quaker community. Because of our religious beliefs, Quakers were considered to be nonconformists. This prevented us from studying at university, and as a result, we were unable to enter the professions, such as medicine and law. Also, because Quakers are pacifists, we couldn't join the army or navy. And so trade and commerce were the only areas where Quakers could focus their ambitions and prosper. I was apprenticed as a tea merchant in Leeds, and then worked in a bonded tea house in London. When I returned to Birmingham in 1824, I borrowed some money from my father to go into business as a tea dealer and coffee roaster. I took over this shop and installed this large plate glass window so that my customers could see the samples of tea, coffee, and cocoa nibs that I'd prepared myself. My colourful window displays soon attracted new customers from far and wide. I even employed a fully costumed Chinese man to help serve in the shop. Oh yes, he caused a lot of interest. And with him minding the shop, I started to experiment manufacturing my own cocoa and chocolate in the cellar behind the shop. You see, I noticed that fashionable people were drinking cocoa and chocolate. I decided to offer them to my customers as well. This was good for my business, because tea, coffee, cocoa and chocolate were considered as acceptable alternatives to alcohol, of which we, as Quakers, strongly disapproved. Let me tell you some more about how my business grew and prospered from these very humble beginnings. I also sold cocoa nibs I prepared myself, chocolate and coffee beans. These drinks were considered as wholesome alternatives to alcohol, which we as Quakers strongly disapproved. And so as my business began to prosper, I was able to attract fashionable customers to buy my goods and see the colourful displays in my shop window. In my spare time, I experimented with preparations of cocoa beans and chocolate, which I could sell in the shop. Soon I had to rent a warehouse in nearby Crooked Lane, where I could manufacture these products on a larger scale. At first, it was very difficult, because I had to pay high taxes on the cocoa beans. And then, on top of all that, I had to move out of Crooked Lane and into another factory, here, in Bridge Street. That's when my brother Benjamin joined me, and together we formed Cadbury Brothers. With more space, we could now prepare a cocoa powder and an eating chocolate that could be packed and sold. Soon after, my eldest son, Richard, joined the company. Having Richard with us made all the difference. He saw to it that the quality of our cocoa improved, introduced new products, and even opened a shop in London. Our efforts were rewarded when we received our first royal warrant from Queen Victoria. That was when my younger son, George, joined us.
George introduced many benefits for the workforce, such as half-day holidays, a sick club, and many improvements in the factory.
And Richard, your new designs for our packaging were a huge success.
Well, we had to try something different, just to get ourselves recognised, Father, as we were still a small company.
I remember it was a struggle, but with everyone's hard work, we managed to turn things around.
Our aim was to manufacture only the highest quality cocoa and chocolate.
I know, and I can tell you some stories of less scrupulous producers who added brick dust to their cocoa.
Ours was still gritty, but we only added sugar to take away the bitter taste and starch to absorb the fat. However, George had heard of a new kind of cocoa press. He went to Holland in 1866, saw the press being used and brought one back.
The Van Houten press.
Oh yes, Father. You see, because we could extract more of the cocoa butter, there was no need for more additives. Not only was our cocoa essence more palatable, but also output increased.
We became the only company in England that could produce such a pure cocoa essence.
We advertised and were praised in medical journals who approved the benefits of our product. Our cocoa essence sales increased and our eating chocolate became even more popular.
The Bridge Street factory was now too small to cope, and we had to expand somewhere else.
For some time, George and I had shared the same vision to build our new factory in a garden setting, away from the smoke and grime of the city.
If the country was a good place to live in, then why not to work there? We found a rural site surrounded by farmland that was just 4 miles south of the city, that was close to a canal and railway line.
We called our new factory Bournville, after the Bourne stream that ran through the land.
And Ville, after the fashion for naming anything in the French style.
We opened our new factory in 1879 and were faced with many more challenges as the size of our workforce increased.
I'm proud that you both have the courage to hold on to our beliefs and continue to treat your employees as though they were part of the family.
Well, you showed us that management could share the responsibility of running the factory by working hand in hand with the workforce.
The improvements that you made in the working conditions in the new factory and the benefits you offered your employees were way ahead of their time.
Times were changing, Father. Why should we allow our workers to live and work in appalling conditions just because that's what other employers did?
As the company prospered, we introduced bonuses, such as payment for output and punctuality, a 5.5-day week, pension schemes, works committees, training, and many other benefits.
What about recreation for our people?
We built swimming pools, gymnasiums, football and cricket pitches, and organised works outings.
And you'd started to develop Bournville Village.
You see, our vision was to create a community around the factory, with decent homes and space to live, so that our employees could enjoy a fuller life.
As the company grew, and our sons joined the business to take over the day-to-day management, George was able to devote more time to developing Bournville Village.
We bought more land and built new houses, a hospital, schools, churches, and many other facilities, not just for our employees, but for the whole community.
As we approached the 20th century, we launched many new brands, including assortments and fancy chocolates.
I sent my son George to Switzerland to find out how chocolate was made using fresh milk.
Soon after, Cadbury were able to manufacture chocolate with a much higher milk content that rivaled even the best Swiss products.
That was when we launched our most important new brand. We called it Cadbury's Dairy Milk. It became so popular with its distinctive taste that sales exceeded all our best expectations. And within a short while, it had become our best-selling chocolate.
We now use milk chocolate in a whole new range of products, from Easter eggs to the new selection we called Milk Tray.
In 1919, we merged with Fry, and the company went from strength to strength.
Through the 20s and 30s, we launched many new products, many of which are still favourites today. Our new glass-and-a-half logo was introduced, and we began using the Cadbury script in all our merchandising.
With the outbreak of war in 1939, chocolate production was drastically reduced and rationed, although we were able to maintain supplies to our armed forces.
Cadbury also contributed to the war effort in other ways.
After the war, the company was determined to start production of chocolate again and recover our position as market leaders.
When I look back to the time when I struggled to make cocoa and chocolate in my shop in Bull Street over 170 years ago, I could never have dreamt that the company would grow to its present size. But through the example, determination and leadership of my sons and their descendants, and with the hard work and loyalty of our workforce, they have secured the company's success and long-term future. And so we have seen that big things have their roots in the smallest beginnings.
Hello there, and welcome to this hot and sunny cocoa farm. Cocoa beans are grown all around the world in tropical countries near the equator, where there is plenty of sunshine and moisture to help them grow. The best cocoa beans are grown here in Ghana. Cocoa, or Theobroma cacao, is the most important ingredient in making Cadbury chocolate. It is the cocoa that gives chocolate its distinctive taste. Our story starts over there, where you can see a farmer and his team planting our young cocoa trees. Hello there! Did you know it's going to take another 5 years before those trees will grow to maturity and the ripe cocoa pods can be harvested? Look, there are some ripe cocoa pods. You can tell they are ripe by their golden yellow colour. Oh, come on, let's go and have a look. What on earth was that? Well, here we are. A lovely, plump, ripe and golden cocoa pod. Once each pod has been plucked, it is cut open so that all of the beans and sticky pulp can be scooped out to be fermented in a heap and then dried in the hot sun until they've turned a rich brown colour. There are up to 40 beans in each pod. This is known as the fermentation process and is how the distinctive chocolate flavour starts to develop. Once the beans are dried, they are tested for their quality before being loaded onto a cargo ship to be transported to England. They are then taken to our factory in Chirk for processing. Now, first the beans must be sorted and physically cleaned to remove any stones, dust and string that have come across with the beans from Africa. This is done using a stream of air and by passing the beans over vibrating sieves. The raw cocoa beans are now pasteurized using very hot steam. Ooh. This is done in small batches using special enclosed containers that rotate so that all the beans are evenly passed through the steam. The clean cocoa beans are now taken to be roasted in revolving, tubular, gas-fired ovens. As each oven rotates, the cocoa beans are slowly and gently roasted as they tumble through a flow of hot air. This whole process is very carefully controlled as roasting gives the beans their characteristic flavour and aroma. The beans are then cooled and are ready to have their shells removed through a process called winnowing. This is done by passing the brittle beans over a series of vibrating trays and hitting them with breaker arms. The shell is then blown away, and the remaining pieces of bean are called nibs. The nibs are now ground up in large mills. This process generates heat, which helps to transform the nibs into a thick, chocolate-coloured liquid called cocoa liquor, or mass. Cocoa liquor is the basis of all our chocolate and cocoa products. Some cocoa liquor is taken to our factory at Marlborough for further processing. The rest of the liquor is pressed to extract the cocoa butter. This is achieved using a special cylinder in which the cocoa liquor is compressed under very high pressures so that the cocoa butter is squeezed out and filtered until it's in its purest form. The refined cocoa butter is now taken to Bournville, where we will catch up with it later. Meanwhile, the cocoa liquor that has been taken to Marlborough is pumped into storage tanks, ready to be turned into chocolate crumb. Over 150 tons of sugar and 500,000 litres of fresh full cream milk are delivered to Marlborough every day to be used in this process. But first, the milk must be pasteurised and then evaporated to remove most of the water before sugar can be added to produce a sweetened condensed milk. The liquid milk and sugar solution is now heated again before the cocoa liquor from Chirk is added and thoroughly mixed to create a thick paste. The paste is then squeezed between steam-heated rollers under a huge vacuum, causing the paste to turn into a powder. The resulting crumb is scraped from the rollers, dried in a flow of hot air, and blown into storage silos. The crumb is now taken to Bournville in tankers, where it is ground and mixed into a paste with this, the cocoa butter, which came from Chirk earlier. The paste is then refined into a flake before being conched or mixed to form a liquid chocolate. This liquid chocolate is used to make all our famous milk chocolate products.
Special buckets, which will be buttons upstairs to be rationed. This is called weigher and bagger, because it weighs up the buttons into a bag. Buttons are a long tube by a machine that seals the bottom, adds the buttons, then seals the top, all in less than 1 second. Now the buttons are packed into boxes called outers. All the outers are then stacked in layers on pallets and sent to our distribution centres. Bars or small bags of sweets are added to the carton before it is sealed. The finished cartons are picked up and loaded into outers before being shipped. Cadbury produce over 35 million Easter eggs at Bournville every year. Cadbury's Easter eggs start life as thick, liquid chocolate. A measured amount of the liquid chocolate is deposited into moulds, shaped like 1/2 of an egg. The egg shells are shaken gently to get rid of all the air, and then turned upside down to tip out the excess chocolate. This covers the mould evenly with chocolate and removes any excess. The half eggs then travel on a conveyor belt under a metal detector, and samples are checked for quality and weight. A special machine then picks up the half eggs, inverts them, and places them into special receptacles. which on the next pass have the second half of the egg placed on top. The whole eggs now make their way to the foil wrapping machine. The egg is then fed into the wrapping machine, where it is carefully held steady, while the foil is first placed over the top before the lower seam is formed. The end sections are then folded to produce the seal. The foil-covered eggs are then spun in a smoothing cut belt, which ensures the foil covering is smooth and fits tightly around the egg before being taken to the packaging area. Here, the cartons are formed before the finished eggs are inserted. The fillers, bars or small bags of sweets are added to the carton before it is sealed. The finished cartons are picked up and loaded into outers before being shipped. Cadbury produce over 400 million Cadbury's cream eggs every year. Cadbury's cream eggs start life as thick, warm, liquid chocolate. The thick, warm liquid is deposited into half-egg-shaped molds. The molds are shaken gently to get rid of any air. The molds pass under a second depositor, which adds a measured amount of white fondant, the egg white, into the mold. The molds then pass under a third depositor, which deposits a yellow fondant, the egg yolk, into half of the egg molds. A special machine then snaps together the two halves of the egg to create a whole egg, rather like quickly closing a book. The eggs then go into a cooler for 45 minutes. The molds are separated and the whole eggs are placed on trays before being passed under a metal detector. The foil wrapping machines wrap each egg individually in distinctive foil before moving them to the automated packaging machine, which inserts a specific quantity into each of the cardboard outers before being wrapped in film.
Cadbury magic.
Cadbury's make it so that after you've unwrapped it, you can use it in that smooth, yielding, so you don't have any times to be spaghetti. It's always I wrapped it. What does that mean? What we put Cadbury's
a special treat for you live. Let's go bananas for my furry friend who needs no introduction. Now this is one of mine. Right. Welcome everyone to the Cadbury Advert Music Party. Can you guess the chocolate that goes with this advert? I'm so excited! I'm so excited! And I just can't hide! I'm about to lose control and I think I'm like it! I'm so excited! I'm so excited! And I just can't hide it! No, 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 no! I know, I know, I know, I know, I know I want you! I want you! I'm so excited! What you do to me!
Get that Friday feeling with Cadbury's Crunchy.
These chocolate decks are spinning so fast. Welcome everyone to the Cadbury Advert Music Party. Hi there.
Yes, but it's a good message. Not just for artists, but all the citizens. It inspires the customers to share what's going on. We'll work in partnership with the future.
His business still prospers. Because without a profit, you cannot do the things you want to do. An unsuccessful business of no value to the community.
I agree. Only a successful business can do the work. That's why we live our values and continue to invest in community projects. And anyone who works for Cadbury knows that he gets involved in turning children benefits around these countries.
So Cadbury have a number of properties like Furcroft and the beaches, grand houses, and they handed them over to the war effort. And in fact, many female employees went to work in hospitals in Birmingham. And in fact, after the war, they took their exams, and some of them actually stayed on in their professions. So it was a form of legacy of the war effort.
That helps students get the experience they need to complete their studies. And we're helping homeless people or people in danger of losing their homes get back to work. With our people acting as job coaches to give them the advice and support they need.
Supporting families. Married women will not work for us, as we do not want to take us away from their mothers and children.
Times have changed, but there are still many challenges that families face, and we still face them. We support Zoom Chat, which used to be an infections for them. That's supporting us as cash donations, information, and the time of volunteers. I think it was very clear for charity back in the day. They're alive today. Darkness making a difference, just as they did.
We turn our values into practical benefits for our people. For instance, in the UK, we started Fit for Life, a programme that gives the happy the tools and information they need to improve their well-being. It's working, and we're all enjoying the process. George, I think you should be proud.